From the beginning of time, they have always known. From the spirits of the elders, the truth comes home together. Ancient, knowing, living voice. The sage message.
I really enjoy that intro, guys. I cannot say that enough. Sanbanani, Bantwana Bokanya. It is Sunday. Happy Sage Sunday, everybody. Right. So we are back and class is in session. And today's episode is titled, To Whom Much is Given. And I think for me, the question came up primarily because I wondered to myself and going through life, right, guys? And going through life, like where do our blessings, abundance, and joys come from, right? Because I think I'm a proponent, I'm a fan of Black joy. And it's not to say that bad things don't happen to the Black child in the world that we exist in, but I also like to tell the nice stories, fun stories, stories of Black people doing great things in taking up space and, that kind of vibe, right? And so I figured my point of departure would be, where do our blessings, abundance, and joys, right? And joy as Black people, as Nguni people, right? Because I've said to you guys that I want to focus on on ubunguni as a concept, but this is generalizable to several other domains. You'll forgive me, my voice is a bit croaky. I've had a long day. The episode almost didn't happen, so it's either I croak or it doesn't happen. And in the spirit of consistency, then this is where we are today, right? Okay, so there's no way for us to unpack the notion of blessings and abundance in the Black child's life without me wanting to really go down to the basics of Nguni cosmology, right? And the different, the hierarchy of Nguni cosmology, if I could put it that way. And to pretty much explain the flow of energy, right? The downward and upward flow of energy, information, and such. And by doing that, I think we could kind of come down to where the source, right? The ultimate source, right? The ultimate source. And so I think, again, because whenever I speak to people about Nguni cosmology, another question that often comes up for me is, oh yeah, but then, I wasn't brought up in a space where my family spent time speaking about the traditional values and aspects around provisions in the family, around good fortune, around that kind of stuff, right? We all grew up in this blessings-focused environment. The majority, at least, not all, but the majority grew up in this blessings-focused environment. And in that blessings-focused environment, we were preconditioned to believe that the blessings came from God. And specifically with people that grew up Christian like myself, and then Jesus was implicated. I don't think of him as anything other than a deity of. He's not even a deity, right? But he's something somewhere. But yeah, so there was always that. So for me, when I started thinking about this and I started working through it, I then realized that I kind of needed to separate religion from indigenous African spirituality, right? I needed to separate these two things because there was a lot of confusion in that sense. And for me, the most basic thing is indigenous African spirituality is a matter of biology, right? And we all know that biology is a natural science, and because it's a natural science, it's rooted in fact. And then religion is a matter of faith and theology. And the crux of theology is that it's rooted in theory, and you have to believe in it for it to be true. But with the indigenous African spirituality, you don't need to believe in anything for it to be true. It's simply a fact. And when it comes to religion, someone needs to teach you about it, right? You kind of need to be indoctrinated into any religious belief. However, with indigenous African spirituality, no one taught me anything, primarily because I was actually brought up in a Christian home, right? Where I was taught to focus on Christianity and the religion and all of this. But then indigenous African spirituality came to me as an authentic experience. So I experienced it. And because it was happening to me in my body, I didn't need anyone else to tell me about it because I could feel it. I didn't need anyone else to point me towards it because it was right in front of me, right? And I mean, of course, when I say this, then it sounds a bit high level and theoretical. But when I say experienced it, I'm saying to you, I don't need to believe that my great-grandmother existed because she's come to me in dreams, right? I knew her when she walked the earth, and so I recognize her when she comes to me in dreams. And because I know my great-grandmother and I know who she was, I also have clear understanding of who her mother was. And even if I do not know who her grandmother was, who would be my four times great grandmother, basically, right? Even though I do not know who she was, because my great grandmother was, I know that her greats were, right? And so my ancestral line is a matter of scientific fact. If I exist today, they existed for however long. Anyone and everyone's existence and parentage can be traced back millions of years. And as archaeological fact would have it, everybody's heritage can be traced to somewhere in Africa, right? This is where man's origins, humankind's origins are traced back to. Everybody's African. Everybody is African, right? And so for me, this is why I say my intelligence, my social skills, my eye color, my beauty, the shape of my eyes, my smile, my laugh even, right, is a fusion of the hundreds and thousands of people that have come before me in my lineage. And so I cannot begin to imagine that there was a time and a space where there was no person that was related to me. Because if that happened, then I wouldn't exist, because then the line would have been extinct at some point. But because I exist, then I know there is a long line of others behind me. And I think that's the best way for me to land my idea of where our blessings and abundance and joy come from. And I'm going to use that as the basis for us to then speak about idlozi and also think about what is above idlozi and the different hierarchies, basically, right, of what comes the further up the spiritual hierarchy we go. Because, I mean, come on, we all know we come from somewhere. And the question is, how do you tap into your somewhere? So anyway, idlozi, guys, angithi. So think of idlozi as your active DNA-based energy that connects your body to the higher realms of the spiritual domain, basically, right? We'll go up the ladder, because I was debating with myself whether to go top down or to go bottom up. but then I've settled on bottom up, right? So idlozi are the people that I was just speaking about. The people that you know, your gran, if she's passed, right? But also your gran can be a living dlozi, but then let's not complicate an already complicated subject, right? Okay, so people that lived in recent history. So your grandmother, if she has passed, your great grandparents, if they've passed, and possibly their, right? You're like your twice great grandparents, right? I always think about them that way. People who are still like within your reach when it comes to familial records and memory and such. I am fortunate enough to be able to like trace up to 7 generations of my family. On at least on my paternal side, we can go back. I'm like the 7th generation, so I can go back like 6 generations, and that's really great. But I always think my cutoff generally is at my great grandmother's parents, right? Then I'm like, okay, this is where my cutoff point is for like idlozi, because anyone beyond that for me starts to feel like more like itong, and we'll get to that. And so idlozi is usually people that have recently lived and they've recently experienced the human life. And so they tend to be temperamental, protective, or demanding. And I'd say because of the way that idlozi is, indigenous African spirituality has the reputation that it has, right? Idlozi is responsible for all the things that have been used to vilify our African spirituality, in the sense that because idlozi can be demanding, because idlozi is possessive in its nature, right? Then it's easy for religions to draw parallels to demonic possession in a way. But it's for completely different reasons, because idlozi liyadlozomela umuntu. It will possess a body with the sole purpose of healing the bloodline, right? It doesn't always come across that way. It doesn't always come across that way, but it is essentially a healing of the bloodline. This is the one thing about idlozi. And then the other thing about idlozi is it will almost always come with added fortune for the family, right? With added insight and grace and such, right? Because the idea is once we transition to the spiritual realm, it's possible for you to gain fresh insight. So it's not unheard of for a staunch Christian to pass and be put to rest and then come back as idlozi and become an ambassador for isintu. And this is primarily because once you transition to the spiritual realm, then you kind of have all the information on some level. Yes, there are things that are unclear to us when we are walking about living our normal lives on earth. That change when we transition onto the other end. And so that is the crux of idlozi. And I'm so focused on making sure that my episodes are never too long. Maybe at another time we'll have a dedicated episode to focus on each level in the spiritual realm. But I feel like that's enough on idlozi. And it's the bloodline worker. It'll protect your physical body, and it will also guide your daily choices and ensure your survival. This is pretty much idlozi 101, to be idlozi. Active DNA, bloodline worker, protective, temperamental sometimes, and demanding other times as well. And just think of it that way. Think of it that way. Yeah. So, and then above idlozi in the spiritual realm, then you have amathongo. And amathongo derived from ubuthongo. Ubuthongo being the thing that overcomes you when you're about to fall asleep, right? When you doze off, you fall asleep. You're falling asleep, I'm dozing off. And if sewulele, bathi uyathonga. Angithi, ukuthonga is slightly different from ukuphupha. Angithi, because ukuphupha is what you'll do on the daily, like your average random dream. Ukuphupha lokho. And we tend to use it very loosely in the sense that we'll say, ngiphuphe lokhu na lokhu. But sometimes you wake up and you'll be like, like my dream from today was a little different. It felt like an ethereal experience I had. I dreamt of this person and we were doing this thing and such and such. And then it transitions from a regular dream to a spiritual encounter, right? And the nature of dreams that are elevated into that box of being called spiritual encounters are what is termed as ukuthonga. Because in that moment, you've been visited by amathongo, basically, right? So remember that. But anyway, amathongo are then a superior, galaxy of ancestors, right? They're still from your bloodline spirits, but these guys no longer have death. They haven't lived in a long time. And so they've kind of, they are pretty much far removed from the human experience, right? And they focus on guiding the soul that acts as the primary custodian of umsamo. So they themselves are a collective of guiding souls. And they focus on keeping umsamo together. Umsamo being the spiritual core of any family, right? All families have umsamo. And so amathongo are basically the glue that keeps umsamo together. And let's say mina, because I'm alive today and I pass tomorrow, and I have unfinished business, right? I had a purpose and I didn't fulfill my life's purpose. So when I transition into the spiritual realm, amathongo will look at me, at my life and how I've lived it, and they'll be like, you still need to go back and finish off what you started. You need to find a body. You cannot come and join the council of souls. You have to go back, right? You're not ready to transition into this superior galaxy of the ancestral bloodline. You still need to go back and fix this thing, and then you can come. And so that's the point of Idlozi coming back to do what it needs to do, right? And amathongo need to align themselves with the guardians. Izithunywa zikamenzi. Umenzi being the creator, right? So above amathongo, you have the creator's guardians. Above the creator's guardians, then you have God. And so for now, the most important thing is for you to focus on Idlozi and amathongo and that relationship. After amathongo, then come izithunywa zikamenzi, the guardians, basically, right? These are celestial bodies that are activated through prayer, meditation, fasting, and living a clean life, right? They are basically divine deities and are directly linked to the creator, to Umdali. There are 7 of them, right? And I'll give you the names and briefly touch on their different working domains. You have Uma, the goddess of creativity and nature. You have Unomhoi, the goddess of sexuality and nature. You have Unomkumbulwan, the goddess of fertility and sensuality. You have Usomandla, the god of power and virility. Usodumo, the god of destiny and rebirth. Umlenzemunye, the god of vitality and courage. And then Umvelinqang, who represents centrality and balance pretty much. right? And so those are our 7 guardian spirits. There's no way that I can do any of them justice today because, like I said, we're just looking into the spiritual hierarchies as they were. And I think the most important thing to highlight on these 7 is that yimimoya yemvelo, guys. And they govern the earth and the human vessel. In the hierarchy, amathongo must align to izithunywa zikamenzi. And then izithunywa zikamenzi then have a direct line to the creator, umenzi, right? Or umdali, who is God. And sometimes called umkhulu, which was kind of distorted by colonization, and then it became unkulunkulu. So those are basically like, how many are they? Like the 4. You have God, umenzi, you have izithunywa zikamenzi, you have amathongo, you have idlozi, and then you have yourself. And now, for us to answer that initial question that I asked, where then do our blessings, abundance, and joys come from in that case? And so for me, my understanding, and I think it's so important, I've been saying this over and over again, that this is very much my understanding. And it's not to say that it's exhaustive. Like I've said, I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this, but I think it's important for my learning as well to be able to simplify things. Because right now I'm still in a very simple understanding phase of things, right? I may progress, and start to sound like some of the people that I hear around us. Some of the people that I am learning from now sound very, very deeply immersed in the subject matter. And so they're unable to simplify it. And so I was like, I still have very simple understanding of things now. And so I should document my simple understanding, right? So to now unpack where do our blessings and abundance flow from? I would say ultimately everything flows from God. But there is clear communication channels that are laid out through these established spiritual levels. So God will ultimately be the one to commission and decommission life, for instance. When they say we were created in God's image, I genuinely believe they speak to our soul, right? Because God is essentially a spirit. And what we mirror in God is us being a spirit as well. So our souls are created in God's image. And because our souls are created in God's image, all of us are a bit of God. So every person living, walking, breathing, and dead. Because when people die, we are also clear on the fact that the soul is separated from the body. And the soul does not die, right? It continues to exist. And so all life is commissioned and decommissioned by God. By life, I mean existence in this realm that we exist in. And the commissioning and decommissioning is done primarily through the 7 guardians. I've explained the different earthly domains that the guardians are responsible for. But I'd imagine a guardian like Uma, right? Who is responsible for creativity and nature, and a guardian like uNomkhubulwane, who's responsible for fertility and sensuality, and uNomoy, who's responsible for sexuality and nature, would collaborate, right? Nobosodumo. They would collaborate to bring into life, also to terminate a life, right? Those deities would collaborate. And in that collaboration, I believe the intelligence is passed on to Amathongo to say, there is this specific purpose that we believe someone from your bloodline could serve. And it is for Amathongo to decide the shell, right? To be like, okay, perhaps this is the shell that this purpose will be embodied in. And when that happens, then and only then are you placed somewhere. Then your dad and your mom get together and whoop, there you are. Right? And so your purpose and your life's fortunes are pre-programmed into you. This is my understanding. However, this extent to which you will manifest this good fortune and all of this is something that remains to be determined by the choices you make. Will you live a life that is in sync and attuned to yourself, to your purpose, that is aligned? Will you be intuitively capable of following the nudges and the clues and everything else that is sent to you for you to live to your greatest potential? That remains to be seen. And so my conclusion to my own question has always been blessings, abundance, and joy flow from clear alignment and good connection to amathongo and isithunyo. And the only way for you to have this good alignment is to exist in pure truth and divine light. And the only way you can do this is, of course, if your aura radiates pure truth and divine light. If you have basically put in the work and you connected to your immediate guardian, who is essentially idlozi lakho. Because amathongo will then be like, okay, we've placed that person there. Now they're ready to be born. And they'll select idlozi to then go and be a guardian angel to you. And so the question is, are you able to maintain that connection to your guardian angel, who can then send messages to you and also help you vibrate at this level where you are able to maintain alignment and connection to amadlozi and isithunyo, as it were? So I hope I've made sense today. I'm so tired, guys. I'm sorry. I hope I've made sense. I don't think I've done much of the different hierarchies, the spiritual hierarchies justice. I don't think I've done that. But I think I've just given a good overview of the framework. And I'll see if I can attach a PDF with a figure that shows all the stuff that I've spoken about. Because I think it's been quite layer heavy. But then we'll see, right? We'll see. I have been your host, uMakhosi, Nguni. Thank you so much. Bantwana bokhanya. You are loved. You are loved. You are loved.
The sage message.